Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Again, apologies for making this 2 videos, but it is what it is. The sliding dovetail piece is all ready to go in, but I need to mount the hinges in here first. And I also took the opportunity to go ahead and do a mock-up of that insert with the pieces that I wanted in it. This is all just garbage. We're going to redo all of this, but I just wanted a test fit to see how everything laid out. And it laid out just fine. Obviously, we're going to clean a bunch of things up. I have new stock all prepped for it, and we're going to change some things in this as well. I just put the stiffeners on here, but I think that we're going to actually shape these a little bit. This spanner wrench for the insert is actually going to get a couple of magnets to hold it, as are the wrenches. The insert block is probably the only thing in here I might keep, but I'll at least show you how I built it when we get there. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and start building this in a little nicer fashion. So I've cut all African mahogany, and I cut a new base for it. And we need to go to the table saw, and I need to put 1/2-inch dados to accept the new sides and the new back and all that good stuff. So I'm going to head over to the table saw to do that, and I'll see you there. I've put the sacrificial fence back on the saw. I have a dado stack set to a 1/2 inch. I've run a test piece to make sure that it fits my stock really well, and I'm happy with that. So the base is going to get this rabbet on 3 sides, and the 2 side panels are going to get the rabbet on 1 side that'll house the back later when we cut it. I also need to make 2 rabbet cuts in the top of those side panels to house the little shelf that these push blocks are going to sit on. So before I go ahead and glue this up, I wanted to take care of a couple of rare earth magnets for the wrenches. I just used a screw in the prototype, but I think a couple of rare earth magnets set in here will do the trick for us. So, full confession, I finally had to break down and buy something on this project, and that's the drawer glides. I'm just using little 6-inch drawer glides on these, And I may upgrade these to 8-inch. I'm not sure. I have some of those on order. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get these mounted so that I can put the center divider in. And I just use this piece of 6/4 board down here as a spacer. So I'm using this 1/8 inch hardboard as a spacer to keep it off the floor. And I'm just going to pilot drill and get these located, keeping them flush to the front. So with the glides finally in, we can go ahead and put this center divider in. Now I'm only going to glue, I don't know, the top 1/2 inch or so and to allow for expansion and contraction. This really isn't structural, it's just there kind of as a divider. All right, and I've got just a smidgen of a gap in there, so I'll go ahead and throw a clamp on it just to close that up. So next up is the actual blocks for the router bit storage themselves, which is kind of what this case is all for. Now I have some rather large panel bits that typically just live in a drawer. They've never been in the cabinet, but this case is significantly deeper than the old one. So I think I'm going to do a larger bottom shelf in this one and then go with the small blocks all the way up. I've set up the table saw to cut at around 30 degrees, and I literally just want to put this shelf in here at around 30 degrees so it fits nicely in there, and then I'll screw it in from the back, but I'll lay out for those large panel bits on this, and we'll get those drilled and we'll get this mounted before we do the small blocks. So I'm going to head over to the table saw and cut this at 30 degrees on both sides so it still fits nice up and down, and then we'll work on the smaller blocks. Okay, so there's the layout I've come up with for these big panel bits. And like I said, I'm using the Rockler inserts, and they require a 5/8 hole. So I'm going to set up over at the drill press and drill these 5/8 holes, and then we can actually mount this in the cabinet. I've marked a line in the cabinet where the top of this is going to hit, so I will also put a couple of marks on here and locate for some screw holes so that I can screw that in from the back, but it will be glued in. All right, so there's that one all set in, and I'm pretty happy with the way that that turned out. There'll still be plenty of room for the other blocks and the other bits. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just glue this in. To glue this in, I'm just going to put a row of glue in the back and then screw it in from the back, and then we'll move on to the next blocks. So now it's time to figure out what I want to go where. And this bottom block is actually going to, sit in just like this. It's a snug fit. And it's going to be raised up just a little to give these other bits a little bit of room. And then all of these bits will stick out. Now I've marked these at 1 1/8 inch apart, mostly just to make sure that I have adequate room for these. But not all bits are created equal or require that size. But this first row is kind of my shorter straight cut bits. There's not as many of them, and they'll go nicely in here so fingers aren't in the way when I'm trying to get these out. So I've built a little jig over at the drill press. I'll show you that in just a second. And I'm gonna go set this up and start drilling the holes in this block. So just like that, this one is not in yet, just set in there for reference. And I'll keep organizing my bits and moving up the case as we go. I will see you guys in the morning when I get all these set. All right, so there's the blocks all in. This upper block up here is not glued in, but that is just more room for growth. And I still have some in here that aren't filled as well. I also made a few extra blocks since I had the material all milled up, and I made a spacer for the standard. And I marked these with exactly what the bevel angle was and all that good stuff, so I can tuck these away and I can come back to this 2 years from now if I need to and recreate this. So next up, we're gonna get after the door and start getting this thing finished up. There's a little discussion going on my forums around which finish to use, because I wanted to use something new for this. So the debate right now is between Osmo and Rubio. So one of those two is going to be the finish on this cabinet. Okay, apologies for the lighting. I don't normally shoot from this side of my outfeed table and table saw, but well, my assembly table is a little full. So next up is the door, and I'm able to get the measurements now that I got the center divider in. I've written them on my board so I can hit my marks. I got the parts all laid out where I want them. I'm going to go over here to the picture frame sled or the miter sled and start getting these things cut to size. All right, so just a quick dry fit to make sure everything is looking good. My seams are all good. So now I'm going to loosen this up and glue it up, and I'll put it in fast forward for the glue up. Okay, I don't normally have to put the corner clamp on these, but for some reason this one just did not want to pull square, and that's okay. It's square now. We'll go ahead and let her cure up, and then we'll probably have to trim just a little bit to final size. Okay, so this being somewhat of an on-the-fly project, I wasn't sure how I was going to reinforce these miters. Normally I just put splines in them and I'm done. But on the case in this one, we used through dominoes using the African mahogany material. And I could have done that here, but they would have been vertical, and that would have been the opposite direction. So I've opted to just go with some hand-cut dowels. I used a dowel plate to cut these down to a 1/2 inch, and I've set blue tape on the drill bit to tell me how deep to go, and I'm going to use a square to help me stay straight, and we're just going to drill these and glue them in. So I set up a square to give me about 3 inches down the door. Then I used the hinge itself to mark for the sides, and as well as give me a mark on here. And then I set up a marking gauge to give me that inside line there. I've also set the depth on a small little 1/4 inch spiral bit, and I'm going to hog the bulk of this out, and then we'll clean it up with a chisel. And while I got that hinge set in there so nice, I'll go ahead and use a Vicks pit and get a couple of pilots in it. And one more to go, and then we'll do the case. So now with the door clamped in place, I'm just going to go ahead and mark these locations, and they'll be across full width. So that'll be an easy mortise. And with the case on the back, all I have to do is go find my tick marks, line up the square, and scribe those across. Then we'll route those out. I'll clean all this stuff out later, so I'm not worried about that. Just get this routed out and cleaned up. I'm using steel screws here and extra short ones. We'll put the real screws in later because we have to take all this apart to do the finish. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do for tonight is just epoxy in a magnet here and in the door. So my epoxy can cure overnight, and then we can go after that drawer front tomorrow and get this thing to finish. 1/2 inch Forstner bit, 1/2 inch rare earth magnet. And then I'm going to use a hole finder or a center finder. Set that on there, close the door. And that should tell me exactly where to drill my hole in the door. Okay, so I've got the hardware in hand, and I know how far up from the bottom it's going to go, and I've set a square for that dimension. I'm going to go ahead and mark the door as well. And then I know this particular handle gets set in this far to get this location. And I'm not sure if I can get it from this side. I can get close. I'll just use the pull itself to mark the other side. And then just like I do with many of my fronts, I'm going to go ahead and pilot drill these and drive a couple of screws, and then carefully get this out and screw it from the inside. And just like that, this is all good to go. I'm happy with the gaps. I'm not happy with the way it's closing up top, and that's due to a looseness in the hinge or in the glide. So I'll probably put a magnet in the top just to help hold that in. And I may put one in the bottom as well. But I'll install all of the handles and stuff after finish. All right guys, so confession time. I had the handle mounted down here and I just didn't like it because the glides, it's so hard to get quality 6-inch glides, and there's just a lot of slop in these glides. So I mounted the handle in the middle just because it worked so much better. And I mounted this handle as well just so I could look at the whole thing and see how it looked. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and break all this, get all the hardware off and whatnot, and get it final sanded and get all my marks and all that stuff off. And we're going to go to finish. All right, so after some input from the folks, good folks on the forum, they chose Rubio Monocoat on this one. Hard wax oil. It's a 2-part mix. It's 3-to-1. And I'm going to mix that up. And I'm going to actually apply with the white Scotch-Brite pad. And they say a little bit goes a long way. So I'm going to test that theory and just mix up one batch and see how far I go. I'm probably not going to film all this because I suspect it's going to take me a while, even though this is actually a very fast finish to apply. But I will show you when I'm all done. So there it is, guys. The Rubio's all on, and they flat were not kidding when they said a little goes a long ways. I was amazed at how well this covered. So, you know, for a cost comparison, you know, it's really not that much. I don't think it's more expensive because the coverage is so good. I'm pretty happy with it. I love the way the color popped. And I may use this again in the future. So I'm going to let this sit for tonight and just cure and do its thing. I do have it all white back now. And then I'll get it all put up tomorrow, and I'll shoot one more video here and show it to you kind of all in place. But all I'm going to do is put it together and hang it now with a finish on it. So I'll see you guys in the morning with a finished cabinet. Okay guys, so the cabinet's all done. Apologies, this is tricky to film, this project hanging in place, because this area is kind of designed for workflow, not filming a cabinet. But I'm super happy with it. All the bits are in and placed where they need to be. The pull-out works very well, and I can get all my stuff that I need in there. Inserts and the wrenches are right here on those magnets, so works out great. And I also moved the 1/4-inch bits down there. I think you can just see it on the edge, but I'll move the camera around and kind of show you what I did for this whole wall. So, all right, there you go, guys. All done. I hope you got something out of it. If you have questions, hit me on the forums, hit my email, all that stuff's in the show notes. And I really appreciate you watching. So until next time, guys, take care.